This is episode number 395 of WPwatercooler. What makes a good WordPress plugin? Brought to you by ServerPress, Maker's Desktop Server. They make local WordPress development easy. Check them out over at serverpress.com. I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me at Jason Tucker on Twitter.
I'm Steve Zehngut. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress Meetup.
It's your boy Jason Cosper, aka Fat Mullenweg. Let's talk some WordPress.
You can go over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to a podcast, and go subscribe to us. Hit the little follow button. For some reason, they think following makes more sense than subscribing, so there was that. Yeah, no say today. It's a say-free show. So the way I was thinking this is like two Jasons and a Steve is the way that this show's set up.
Sure. Is that like two and a half men?
Exactly.
As long as you're okay with being the half man, Steve,
I knew
it's all good.
that was coming. I knew that was coming.
Oh yeah.
I don't need this abuse.
So today we're going to be talking about WordPress plugins, and in particular, what makes a good WordPress plugin. There's a lot of things that can make a good WordPress plugin. There's a lot of things that can make a WordPress plugin really bad, which maybe a good way of starting this is to talk about a few of the bad pieces, and then we can kind of jump into what the good ones are. What do you guys think about that? Oh crap, he's muted. Try again, Steve.
I said if you ask that, you're going to take up the entire show.
Well, one of the things when I was writing up the description for the post and for the video and all that stuff was like, what are some of the things that really like kind of tick you off when it comes to WordPress plugins? And probably the one big one that really gets me is when the interface doesn't look like it's WordPress. It's like you just got dropped into this like website inside of a website sort of situation, and you're like, what's going on here? Like the whole interface looks different, and I don't know if that makes that a good WordPress good WordPress plugin because they changed the entire interface. That just makes you think that like WordPress itself has a horrible interface.
That was top of my list as well. I think UI it can make or break your plugin, right? And basically, I think what you have to look at is what's the learning curve on your plugin, right? If somebody installs it, are they gonna have to go read a manual to figure out how to use your plugin, or can they just sort of start using it immediately as soon as they activate it?
Right. Yeah, I think using the built-in UI frameworks and obviously there's always going to be something that you have some special little tricky thing that you want it to do. But if you can stick to the things that are already there and try to use those, it's going to look native, essentially. It's going to look native. And I guess that might be a good thing, right?
Yeah, and for the plugin developers that are out there, I mean, the WordPress includes most of the hooks that you need to make it look like the WordPress dashboard or the WordPress admin interface are there, right? It's not that tough as a developer, because I've developed plugins before to just put it in and kind of put it into the existing dashboard, because those elements are all available to you, right? Even something as simple as the table view in WordPress. So if you go to like the posts tab or the pages tab, right? There's a view in there in WordPress called that table view, where it's got the names across the top, and then it's got alternating row colors, and that's sort of the WordPress look for a list of things, whatever it may be. And I noticed that a lot of plugins, even when you go to their immediate like front page or their interface to look at the stuff that you've created, they don't use that same table view, right? And so it's jarring. It may look a little bit different, but it's really easy just to bring in that WordPress table view. There's not much to it. It's available to you, so use it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I think the other one for me that's really starting to be a little bit more prevalent for me is just having frickin' blocks. Like shortcodes, I get it, man. Shortcodes, you could throw a whole bunch of stuff on it, but all of those little switches can just be little boxes over on the right hand side. When you click on the block, you can go and configure the block the way it needs to be done.
And that might be a matter of whether a plugin's been maintained recently or not, right? And so I kind of lump that under maintenance, right? To me, that's what makes a good plugin, is a plugin that is well maintained and regularly maintained, right? So you can kind of tell that a plugin hasn't been maintained if it's still using shortcodes, right? Because shortcodes has been, out of fashion for quite a long time now. So we've had the block editor for several iterations. You shouldn't really be using shortcodes in your plugin anymore.
But they're still out there.
Oh yeah.
And new plugins are coming out with it still.
I know.
And it's just like, what are you doing?
Oh, I know.
We need to get some co-parenting happening here. We need to get people that are like okay with having, the old way of doing things. And then we need to have some folks that are more new school that are to like, hey, I'll write the JavaScript for you that's going to make this part work, and just start building it up.
And putting my developer hat on for a minute, right? If you developed a plugin that had shortcodes in the past, it's okay to make it backwards compatible and leave that code in, right? So that's fine, but you should update your plugin so that it uses the newest, latest and greatest stuff inside of WordPress.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
What do you think, Cosper? What do you got?
Well, no, I really have to agree with you with UI stuff. I will say this with my chest. I do not like how WPMU dev, all of their plugins look like how they think WordPress should look instead of how WordPress actually looks. And any time that I have logged into a site where I'm trying to help them work through something and I see that they have WPMU dev, I'm not going to get any fans from them over there, but just their UI, it's like they want to be cutesy and cartoony and everything else. There was a period where Yoast was really bad about this, where everything kind of, even though they fit it within the WordPress UI, that they just, I don't need to see these. I understand you guys spent the money on these like cute little cartoons, but I don't need to fucking see them. I just want.
So true, man. So true.
I just want to get in, click the things that I need to click, and change the settings I need to change, and that's that. I will say these guys do a decent job of looking like WordPress, but also, since I'm like just airing out my shit list here, anytime I see a WooCommerce site with a Yi Themes, aka Yith plugin, I brace myself for the crap show that I'm going to have to deal with in like fixing problems, in optimizing things. They just it can be really slipshod as far as code quality goes. I'm not saying that like blanket. I know that they're doing a lot of work over there. They've got a lot of plugins, but man, they've also got a lot of plugins and they don't all do the job very well. I think if they worked on focusing up a little better, that maybe they could improve there. But I mean, they for a while, I don't know if any of their plugins still have it, but they were some of those people who were still enqueuing like JavaScript libraries that you only use on the back end. On the front end of the site, they're doing things like that, where it's just like, why do I need this jQuery library or whatever that only gets used when I'm looking at your UI or, your plugin functionality, as opposed to like, those are the things that really take the jam out of my donut.
Yeah. Well, it's that performance thing that you're talking about, where if they just look at what things they are enqueuing on the front end, then we don't have to go through a bunch of extra stuff to remove it, in functions or do anything like that. Yeah. It's just like, just keep things clean.
Well, and Cosper said something, a word there I think is important, which is about
donut.
Yeah, jam. No, focus, right? So I find that a lot of plugins sort of try to do too many things within the plugin, and they lose their focus, right? And when that happens, again, it speaks to sort of the learning curve that somebody has to, and the hurdles somebody has to jump through to use the plugin. You know, keep the plugin focused on what it's supposed to do, and don't add in a bunch of other stuff. Chris Lemma actually wrote a blog post about this and published it this morning about designing products and constraints. Adding constraints to yourself when doing product design. And I think that's relevant when it comes to plugin design, because I find that too many plugins try to do too many things, and they don't need to, right? If your plugin is if your people are downloading your plugin to do a particular function, keep it focused on that function.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't need to be all in one.
Swiss
it doesn't
Army
need to be
knife.
like all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like everything needs to have an SEO thing.
What'd you
It's
say?
like everything. So
You said we lost you there.
Jetpack.
Oh.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about interface a lot. We've talked about focus, but there are plugins that do a lot, but still present it in a easy to digest interface, right? And that's again, I think what can make or break a plugin is even if you have a lot that your plugin's doing, if you can sort of boil down the interface, the dashboard interface, to 3 to 5 things at a time, right? So that your people aren't getting overwhelmed. That's true of site navigation, but that's also true of your dashboard. You know, your admins are getting overwhelmed if you go to the plugin dashboard and there's 25 things that are being presented to you that you can do.
right.
One of the plugins that I actually feel fails that, and this plugin fails for a lot of reasons, but there's a plugin called WP Discuss with a Z, right? It's supposed to be sort of a replacement for Discuss or any of the comments plugins that are out there. It's self-hosted comments. I don't recommend it for several reasons, but UI wise, it is overwhelming. You get there and there's 50 things that you can do, and each one of those things that you click on has another 100 things that you can set within the configurations file. It is overwhelming.
So I will say to what you're saying, Steve, it's not the greatest, but WooCommerce does this better in their settings. They actually have things metered out by like, okay, what am I looking to do? What setting am I looking to change here? And that you can actually go through and click through all these different tabs. Sometimes it's a pain because you're like, where is this setting? I'm just looking for this damn setting. But at the very least, they try to delineate what you're trying to do with where you need to go.
They absolutely do. Now, I will find that I do find that several of the WooCommerce add-ons, even the ones you buy in the WooCommerce store, add extra settings tabs and don't always put things in the right places. So WooCommerce just out of the box by itself does a great job of that. When you start to put in add-ons, it becomes very confusing.
Right.
Back on WP Discuss for a second. One of the reasons I was going to say it also fails, sort of the question that we're asking here today, is what makes a good plugin is it is resource intensive. Like, it is a resource hog. So if you've got any sort of traffic coming in on your comments or you're using WP Discuss, you actually need a pretty beefy server to handle it, because it is intense. Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Well, I was thinking, what makes a good WordPress theme is, and it depends on what you're thinking on the left sidebar there on the dashboard menu. Like, should all this crap be inside the settings menu? Should all this crap not be in the settings menu? Should there be some consistency? Like, what do you guys feel in here? Like, I mean, if I look at a site that I've installed, 30 plugins, 20 plugins or whatever, half of them are inside one thing. The other half are in the others, are in a settings thing. Some of them have put it in the tools menu. So you're like, I literally do this. I look at tools, I look at settings, and then I finally look at the main piece and I go like, where is this at? I'm constantly looking for menu items. I
find with some plugins that feels like an ego thing on the developer's part, right? That when they start to put their tab as a top level tab on the left, when it really doesn't need to be, right? Now, some things that need to be top level would be something like a forms plugin, right? Because that's a custom post type. You get forms, right? That's a top level tab. But, something like a caching plugin, to me, that belongs under settings, right? And WP Rocket actually does that. They put themselves underneath the settings tab, right? They don't have a separate tab, whereas some of the other caching plugins like Super Cache and Total Cache, at least when I used them last, which was years ago, would give you a top level tab because they think they're that important.
Right. One in particular that I want to pick out is WP activity log, which that damn thing literally is above Jetpack. It's below dashboard, above Jetpack. It's like, you're going to use me every single day. And I'm like, bro, I'm not even using. I mean, I use you like once a month, just to make sure we're good.
I will say there are especially managed web hosts who need to learn to be a little bit more humble, because they'll put themselves above the dashboard. For the longest time, WP Engine was the tab above dashboard. And it's like, listen, I understand you are the web host, but who the fuck do you think you are?
-999. No one's going above us.
Yeah.
No. Be humble.
Well, and part of that is not that the tab is at the top. It's the things that are in that tab that you're rarely going to use, right? So that the things that are in that WP Engine tab were clear the cache, and maybe that's it. Clear the cache. Oh, and initiate a staging server. Copy staging to production and production to staging. Those are things that I go to once a year, right? Maybe once a month.
And the clear cache button is already sitting in the menu bar, up along with everything else. So it's like, not only do they think that they're better than the dashboard, they also have one of the sole 4 functions in that little section is up in the damn menu bar, the one you need the most.
And in my mind, that's what the plugin developers should ask themselves: is how often is somebody going to be using this? Right. That should really determine whether you're a top level tab or a settings tab or no tab.
Yeah.
I always appreciate just one last thing before Jason moves us on. I always appreciate when a plugin will put a link to its settings in the plugins list. So you have the information about the plugin, etc. And then you see that little link that says settings. Half the time I find myself in the plugins page when I can't figure out where a setting is, to go, okay, were they cool? Did they put the settings in here so I don't have to dig for this crap? And a lot of plugins that actually have things figured out tend to stick that little link there. It's not a big lift to put that there. And
it doesn't help to make the background change colors randomly on that thing. That doesn't help me any. I'm good. I don't need that. I don't need that.
By the way, Jason, real quick, I know you mentioned activity log.
Yeah.
Replace that and start using stream instead.
Okay. Yeah. Good to note. One of the other things I wanted to think about, and when you mentioned humble, it made me think a little bit about this, is the idea that if you make a very popular WordPress plugin, go into the WordPress repo there, do a quick search for your own plugin, and then type in the word nag after it. If something exists, you're obviously doing something wrong. If they're having to make a plugin to remove all of the little naggy things that show up on the top of your plugin, on the top of the dashboard, on every single page on the dashboard, dude, you're not that important. You're not that important.
And frankly, stop trying to sell me shit. Stop trying to sell me more shit. I downloaded your plugin. I'm using it. Stop trying to sell me more stuff within the notifications bar on the top of my website. I don't need it. I'm not going to buy it. And if you ask me for a review, I'm just going to say I already gave you one.
Right. And most of the time, I'm not even going to look at it anymore, because I'm going to hand the site off to my customer, and now they're going to have to deal with your crap.
And they're just
I don't want to have them deal with your crap.
Yeah, those notifications are awful.
Yeah.
I mean, my biggest notification nag is when they ask me if I want to send metrics up to whatever third-party service they're using, probably Freemius, and saying I actually I haven't looked through the repo for this yet or GitHub. I'm almost wondering if there's like a freemius style, like if ad block basically for your own WordPress site of like, you know what, man, I don't want to send any of this data up to anybody. Yeah. Like, just let me run my damn site.
Well, and there should be something in WordPress that says, look, my answer is no. For anybody that asks me, my answer is no. Just don't ask me anymore.
Yeah.
And are we talking about the thing where you disable a plugin and then it prompts you and asks you? Is that what we're talking about?
That's the worst.
Oh, we're talking about something different.
Why are you disabling my plugin? Because I want to. That's why.
Right.
I always tell them it's temporary, just to lead them on. You know. Yeah. Call me back in 3 days. I'll be more than happy to talk to you.
It's not you. It's me.
It's me. Oh, if you could put that on your plugin, you know, I will click that all the time.
That is a good plugin idea, is to have a plugin that just automatically replies no anytime you're asked anything by another plugin. I'm going to create that.
No.
No
is a complete sentence. Yeah. No is a complete sentence. The plugin.
The plugin.
I love it.
Oh, man. Oh, that's good stuff. So I know it sounds like we're bitching a lot about like what these do, but you kind of have to look at it from the bad side, because if you look at it from the good side, it's just like, I want all the fonts to be the system font that's on here, so it makes it look the same. Like,
I want plugins to always use a proper dash icon for their left-hand tab, right? Have you seen plugins that have their own icon and it ends up bigger than the tab and spilling over into other tabs? That's the first plugin I turn on. As soon as I see that, I turn it off. I go, okay, clearly this plugin hasn't been updated in a while, or they don't care, so I'm not going to use it.
Right.
I know that there's a big to do lately over the capital P dang it stuff in WordPress. I know that people are kind of pitching a shit fit over it lately, and I get it, but. If I see somebody, if I turn on a plugin, I'm looking through the settings and I see a lowercase p, I think, like, how much experience do you have in the community or in like with developing WordPress stuff? And I that's kind of a ding. I might not deactivate it right away, but I'm like, ooh, you need to fix that.
To me, it speaks to attention to detail, right? If they don't have the attention to that detail, how is the code? Kind of what shape is the code in?
Right.
Yeah. What if it's something that you intentionally do like this? I spell it WordPress now.
Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah, no, I look at those all the time. And see, like, you get these emails that somebody sends you and they spell it WordPress lowercase with a space in between, and you're just like, bro, okay. Yeah, I know you got something else listed that you're going to be pitching me a paragraph down as well.
So there's another specific category of plugins that's been on my shit list lately since we're venting. And that is all of the plugins that attempt to rework the media library into folders or categories or any of that stuff, right? None of them work. None of them have gotten it right. None of them. Right. And I understand we've talked a lot. We've talked for 12 years now about the media library and how you can't categorize, you can't put it in folders. Right. It's very basic as far as compared to other media libraries. So there have been plugins that have attempted to solve this, and they're all horrid, all of them. And so if anybody has one that's out in the community that can recommend to me, I'd love to try it out.
I'm literally starting to GoFundMe right now, and I'm going to make sure that we can get this thing fixed. Because if we go 10 years and we still don't have a good media library, then we did our job wrong.
Look, I understand it's hard, right? This is a very difficult plugin to create, but there's several of them that are out there that have attempted to do it, and they're just terrible. I mean, they're god awful.
Yeah, and they break tons of stuff. If you have another plugin that tries to manipulate something within the media library, everything breaks. It just breaks hard, super duper hard.
Yep.
Oh man, no joke. I'm literally making that GoFundMe, and that crap is going out the second we're done with this episode.
Fantastic.
Oh goodness! All right, what else you got? What other things we should be focusing in on when we're shopping for a plugin?
Oh, okay. Documentation.
Yes.
There you go.
If you actually, let's actually talk about what makes a good plugin, and instead of just complaining about the things that we hate about bad plugins. Good plugins have documentation. You can actually install, if you go and look at the documentation and go, okay, after reading this, I know what this plugin does before even installing it on my site. That's a good sign. I mean, you can have bad plugins with good documentation. I've seen my share of those as well, but at least you can actually figure out how to work around that crap.
So just putting in various small bug fixes as the changelog, that's not good enough for you?
No. No. But actually having documentation where it's like, this is what the plugin does. Here are clear screenshots or videos or whatever of here is the plugin in action. Things like that. Things where if it's like a premium plugin, if they have an active blog that talks about what the plugin does and not just like, here's some crap from the WordPress community, like we're trying to run a news site or something like that. No, tell me about what the plugin does. Tell me about the changes that you made in version 5.0 of your latest release, things like that. An actual complete change log when they make changes, another big one.
I put this in the show notes, but a good example of a plugin that got it right on the documentation side is Ninja Forms. So the Ninja Forms documentation is very well done. Very complete, easy to find what you're looking for from both the user standpoint and the developer standpoint. So they definitely did it right. I'm not saying there's others. Yeah, there's plenty of others worth mentioning, but that's the first one that comes to mind when it comes to good documentation.
I don't want to scare away our beginner listeners, but from a developer standpoint, also with regards to documentation, I look at the code in some cases and see what the internal documentation on the plugin looks like. Mm-hmm. If they have actually documented the functions, all of the things that they need to actually be documenting, that's normally the sign of, as Steve said, attention to detail. They know that someone is going to be digging around in this, especially if it's something like WooCommerce that has like a whole extensions or rich extensions, like Ninja Forms, that has like a rich extensions like community. Yeah,
I'll second that as well. I use the code as the documentation from a developer standpoint, and you can tell pretty quickly whether it's comment or not. You can tell pretty quickly if the code is organized well. And so yes. I know right away if something was coded well. I can't think of the plugin. I'm trying to think of it, but there was a plugin. I actually went into the code the other day, and there was actually the only comments were in the code were. Literally, it said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing, but I know I didn't do this well, but we'll get back to it at a later date. Literally, it had a comment. Those comments were in the code. So that made me feel real confident about the plugin I was using.
Well, most of these plugins are scratching an itch. And if you're scratching that itch enough, then that means you really, truly want this thing fixed. And you want it fixed well. And, I could see maybe, yeah, I had to get this to work, and I got this to work, and this is why I had to write this one little piece in there saying, I'll get back to this at some point.
I was going to say, also from a developer standpoint, if they have a repo up on GitHub on one of the Git hosting services, see what their issues look like. Mm-hmm. Like actually take a glance and see if someone brings up an issue and it's just been sitting there for 6 months, 2 years, say found something that was like 3 or 4 years ago at this point, like, oh yeah, we'll get back around to this in a few months. And it was like a 3-year-old issue. And it's like, crap. Okay, they're not fixing this. This is probably a problem. This is going to be a problem for me. But I mean, if they're addressing, I know, especially in the WordPress community, a lot of these people are doing this crap for free. Like, and you need to be respectful of that. But If it's something that you want to use on your site that will make you money, that will, that you're going to earn a living from, then make sure that the people working on this actually give a crap about doing it and weren't just scratching an itch for like 5 minutes and have walked away from it.
Well, and I'd also add to that, how well does the company that's making the plugin or the people that are creating the plugin, how well do they engage? Right. I'll give you an example. I actually found a bug in the Authorize.net payment gateway add-on for WooCommerce recently. Found it, submitted a patch, and they got back to me nearly immediately and said, "Oh, thank you very much." Because what happened was there was a change in the API on the Authorize.net side that the plugin just wasn't up to date on yet. And it was something very specific. They said thank you, and they actually rolled out a patch in 2 days with the code that I suggested for them.
That's cool. That's cool.
So, those are plugins I'll stick with because I know that there's a team behind it that is actually engaged and listening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes money is the thing that fixes that. You charge people a couple bucks. You have a couple bucks that you can actually spend to or feel like you need to actually keep this thing up and running. So, or if there's a plugin that's not doing something you want, or it's broken and it's broken, donate some money. Right. Just most of them have donation links. Donate some money, or even say, can I donate some money to your team, right, to fix this? $100, in that case, goes a long way. Definitely.
Money talks, right?
That's about it, folks. Thank you very much for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. If you like this stuff, tell somebody about it. Leave us some comments on social media, places that you're watching this stuff, just so we know that we're seeing you and you're seeing us at these locations. We'd appreciate it. Talk to you later.
What if I don't like this stuff?
You're not on social media, are you? See you. Bye. Go over to WPwatercooler.com/subscribe to subscribe to this content. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and you can watch us on YouTube. Talk to y'all later. You have a good one. Bye-bye.